Solange has been dedicated for literally decades to the environment, to keeping our open spaces open and our green spaces green. And in the political world in which we now live, we need people with good hearts and good souls. And there is no one that has a better heart and a better soul than Solange. And so, Solange.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure.
I'm so lucky. So I've never lived anywhere with family. So David and I are about 5 generations apart. Boy, did I cling on when he showed up in town. So yeah, I am Solange, and I know most of you, but I will, and everybody knows I jumped into this because of the preserve. Because the preserve matters to everybody in Scottsdale, and actually to the planet, but I'll get to that later. But I was a preserve commissioner years ago when we built this preserve. And so anybody who's lived in Arizona more than 6 months knows that Scottsdale voters are tax adverse. If anybody hasn't noticed that, come talk to me. But so what's amazing is that Scottsdale taxpayers, or Scottsdale voters, 5 times voted to hike taxes to acquire and preserve the most expensive land in all of Arizona. And that's the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve. So this was not a Republican issue, because it was not a Democrat issue. We would not have had 70% of the voters vote yes without it being a Scottsdale issue. So it was pretty miraculous. And I was happy to be a little bit part of that. I was just a cog in the wheel as a preserve commissioner. And I went door to door a lot too. So 2-3 years ago, we realized that this nonprofit called the Desert Discovery Center Scottsdale Incorporated was spending a lot of time lobbying to get a commercial development in our preserve that would breach the preserve boundary, thus opening the entire preserve for development. And plus, they would be profiting and limiting public access to 6 of the most expensive acres in the preserve. And so I met with Sam Campana, is the person behind it. She was a single-term governor or mayor, and I always thought we would be protected by a vote, right? I just smiled and thought, good luck with that, Sam. And then the city council voted in majority, and one of the people who has adamantly opposed this is Kathy Littlefield. She's here. The majority voted to deny us a public vote. Then I spent a year talking to all the council people, thinking they must have made a big mistake. They didn't make a mistake. This is what they want to do. And they want to do it for private interests. It opens up, it uses all the money that we need to buy more acres to develop acres. And that makes a lot of housing developers very, very happy. So the consequence of building on this preserve on this part of the preserve is we lose other acres up north. So I gave up on city council and I jumped in the race, and the first person I ran into when I was leaving was Jim Lane, our mayor, Mayor Lane, and he did say that I am the most agreeable disagreeer, so I'll take that as an endorsement. And I think that I do think that there is some movement on council if we demonstrate that the citizens care. So jumping in, I found out that what is going on with the preserve actually represents what's going on with the city. So 10 years ago, we had a fund for capital improvement. So like if a bridge was like going to fall apart, the city could write a check. Now we're $800 million in the hole. So we have $800 million of infrastructure needs. So we have bridges that need repair, bathrooms that aren't ADA compliant, buildings that are, need roofs, and we don't have the money to do it. So how did we go from surplus to $800 million in the hole? It's called bad priorities. So public dollars work really well if they only benefit public interests. But the minute you start giving money away to the private interest, public dollars to private interests, you run out of money and then you get in the hole. And that's where we are today. So the Desert Discovery Center is just the gigantic buy that brought my attention and many other people's attention. This decision to borrow $70 million of public dollars to build a building we don't need, don't want, and will ruin our preserve was just an example of what they've been doing all these years, which is why we are $800 million in the hole. And I just want to say one more thing. You're not allowed to use public debt or public dollars for private interests. This is against the city charter. But the city council doesn't seem to worry about that, so that's why I'm running for city council. So thanks so much for coming out here, and it's actually been a lot of fun. And I do a lot of door-to-door. Kathy Littlefield has been one voice on city council that if there's a development, neither one of us are against growth, but you should make it so it benefits the existing residents, and there should be a resident buy-in. And so Kathy Littlefield's been fighting for that, and so she's an incumbent also running. So come on out, Kathy. Okay.